It's Ask Me Anything time here again on Jimmy Rants. Join us here today. Click on that little box down there in the corner. It'll take you straight to IGTV for today's episode. JimmyRants.com is the website, and as always, you can engage live in the content. You got to go follow me over on Instagram. I am at Livin' Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, engage live, just like all these amazing people coming in right here, right now. We do go live 11 a.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, so don't miss an episode. We also go simulcast live over on my Facebook page, so thank you to all my Facebookers. And then finally, over on the YouTube channel, the live stream is ready to go over there. Thank you guys for being here, and thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay on IGTV right here on Instagram. So be sure to check it out. You can also see all the past episodes up over on YouTube. So if you type in the keyword Jimmy Rants, you will find the show. And then finally, go to the official website for this show. It is jimmyrants.com. And then once you're there, you can see all the past episodes. And it's also the way that you can support the work that I'm doing here. I have 0 sponsors, guys. I literally made the decision about a month and a half ago that I wanted to be totally listener supported, viewer supported. If you like what I do, I can only continue this if you continue to support. So I have a Patreon link that you can click on once you're at jimmyrants.com. If you want to make a monthly donation or a one-time donation with PayPal, those links are right there. If you are a Patreon of mine, you will get some perks, and one of the perks that I do is I release the next week's podcasts to you early. So right now, if you are one of my Patreons, you actually get to see the 2 videos from next week's episode of Livin' Ldl Low Carb Show, as well as Real Talk. Have 2 great interviews coming up. Amanda Decker is a registered nurse who is into low carb diets, trying to help her patients in rural Tennessee understand the value of low carb. And then Thursday's episode on Real Talk is with Abel James, one of my fellow podcasters, and we talked about all kinds of stuff. So you can go watch those right now if you are one of my Patreons, and click on that Patreon link at jimmyrants.com. Okay, you guys, it is Friday, and Friday means it is Ask Me Anything. So literally, this is the one day of the week. People ask questions all the time, all throughout the week. Can I ask you a question? Yeah, but if you come on Fridays, Jimmy Rants, that's when I answer questions. So if you have a question about ketogenic diets, about fasting, about cholesterol, about just the general health community in general, podcasting, book writing. I talked to a lady just this morning for about a half an hour. She's writing a book, and she needed some tips, and so I've written 9 books. I've got a little experience with that. And then really anything you just want to ask me, personal or otherwise, we'll give it a go. So ask your questions. Go ahead and start writing those questions down there. I see a bunch of questions coming in over on YouTube, so thank you guys. Keep those coming. Definitely write all of your questions for me down there. And when I come to you in just a minute, we'll hit those. As always, I always hit some headlines first that caught my attention. Not worthy of a full Jimmy Rants, but kind of interesting stories to me. Then we have a few canned questions ahead of time that we will hit, and then I will come to you. So get your questions ready, guys. Don't leave me hanging. Like, this is Ask Me Anything, and it's kind of a boring show if nobody asks me anything. So please ask your questions. All right. This first one, Coca-Cola or bottled poison, Mexico finds a COVID-19 villain in big soda. So listen to this, you guys. Coca-Cola has infiltrated, this is from USA Today, by the way. Coca-Cola has so infiltrated Mexico. This is going to be shocking. It is cheaper to drink Coca-Cola than it is to drink water. And in some places, Coca-Cola's availability is more readily available than water. Isn't that sad? And so what they're looking at now with COVID-19 and the cases mounting and the death toll soaring, they only trail Brazil and the United States as far as total fatalities at this point. the president of the country, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, he is looking to try to curb back on some poor nutritional habits, and he's targeting soda consumption as the chief among them. Get this, Mexicans drink more soda per capita than any other country in the entire world. 163 liters per year. Oh. So think of those 2-liter bottles, and it's about 82 of those a year. So what's that? Like 1.5 of those a week? Are you drinking 3 liters of Coca-Cola a week? Now, back in the day, Jimmy Moore was a lot more than that. I've talked very famously about drinking 16 cans of Coca-Cola a day. I did. But in Mexico, it's not just an addiction. It is an addiction, but it's a necessity for them because they can't find other sources of beverage. Coke is more readily available. So yeah, they're trying to crack down on Coca-Cola consumption. Of course, the beverage industry there has challenged this, saying, oh, we consume less than 6% of our calories from sugary drinks, and we don't need to target big soda. Well, yeah, what do you expect the beverage industry to say? But I mean, I'm hoping that some of these kinds of like focuses on the ill effects of sugary like soda and things like that trickles into other countries, because this is a big problem. I know Coca-Cola has tried to spin this, oh, it's all about balance in your life and just count your calories, and this is a part of a good, balanced calorie diet, blah blah blah. It's just smoke and mirrors. They know that their actions are directly responsible for obesity, diabetes, and so many other things that are going on. So it's good that finally Mexico is kind of leading the charge on this to try to do something about it. This next headline from CNN: University forces professor to change the syllabus. It threatened to dismiss students who argue against Black Lives Matter, abortion, or same-sex marriage. This is a professor at Iowa State University, came under fire for threatening to discipline students who submitted any project or paper that would oppose abortion, the Black Lives Matter movement, or same-sex marriage. The threat was made in the professor's English 250 syllabus, and in the syllabus, the professor says the course's goal is to help students to develop skills in written, oral, visual, and electronic communication, but it issued a giant warning that any instances of issuing an assignment that you participate in intentionally, things like racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, blah, 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 on and on, body shaming, are grounds for dismissal from the class. So the same goes for any projects and papers. You cannot choose any topic that takes its base that one side doesn't deserve the same basic human rights as you, such as gay marriage, abortion, Black Lives Matter. I take this seriously. So what do you think about that? That's really interesting that this professor, they've obviously made him not do that. Like, we look at places of higher learning as the place where you start to learn to critically think for the first time in your life, perhaps. And a lot of these kids, they don't have critical thinking skills. And so if they're told you can't speak up on any given issue, like, I have a problem with that. Like, we're seeing the manifestation of people that don't have good critical thinking skills in 2020. Because there's a narrative out there about COVID-19 and everybody's obediently following it. There's a narrative about what you're allowed to say when it comes to the race relations stuff, and everybody's obediently following it. We need more critical thinking. We need people that can say something that's counter to what everybody else is saying. That is how you learn. That's how you learn to reason. That's how you learn to think. And through thinking and through presenting ideas, you come up with new ideas and new perspectives and new ways of looking at things. I'm kind of over in 2020 that you have to conform to some certain dictatorial position just because that's what everybody else is doing. Like, is that bothering anybody else? For me, Critical thinking is so key if we're going to progress forward as a culture. We need to be critical thinkers. We need to always question things. Questioning things is not a bad thing. It's been made out to be this big boogeyman. Oh, you're not allowed to question. Yeah, you are allowed to question. And I would argue you should question. And you should always, and thank you, Mike, yes, critical thinking with truth. Always bring out the truth. And I'll give you a fine example. So this unfortunate situation that happened in Wisconsin where this guy was shot. And it was unfortunate. And of course, it then led to a lot of the rioting that happened that night in Kenosha. A bunch of things were on fire, and it's been that way for a few days now. What they didn't show you, though, is the video just before that video. And in the video just before that video, because it's not on the mainstream television, you have to go seek it out, but it's online. In the video before that video, you see the guy has a knife, and he's fighting with the police officers. They tase him, he gets loose from the taser, and then the next thing you know is when he walks around and everybody's seen that video. Well, that's the whole truth. And we should be able to talk about those things openly. Well, he wasn't, complying. He could have just complied. And if he complied, perhaps this unfortunate incident would not have happened. But everybody wants to focus on what they see and what they want people to see, and not have the totality of the information. And that should be allowed to happen. So good on that university calling that professor out and saying, we're not going to let you just have one point of view. You need to allow an open point of view. And of all places, a college campus is where all points of view should be out there, and we learn to live in the real world. Because in the real world, you're going to have people of all kinds of thought processes. Good, bad, ugly, in between. And all of it is valid to be spoken. All of it's not valid to be adhered to, but all of it is valid to be heard. At least currently in the United States of America, you're still allowed to be heard. All right, if you're just joining us, we are doing Ask Me Anything. So this is your day. If you have a question for me, keto, cholesterol, fasting, book writing, podcasting, being famous online, or anything for me, ask away your questions, you guys. We'll come to you here in just a minute. I'm doing my traditional kind of going over a few articles ahead of time. And I'm on the last one. This last one is a study out of the British Medical Journal, and it's Emerging Technologies, Pharmacology, and Therapeutics. It's a study entitled Improvements to Postprandial Glucose Control in Subjects with Type 2 Diabetes, a multi-center, double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trial of a novel probiotic formulation. So a growing body of evidence suggests that specific naturally occurring gut bacteria are underrepresented in the intestinal tracts of those who have type 2 diabetes, and that their functions like a gut barrier stability and butyrate production are important to controlling and normalizing your glucose and your insulin levels. The objective of this study was to test the hypothesis that enteral exposure to microbes with these proposed functions can safely improve your glycemic control, in other words, lower your blood sugar, and thereby play a role in the overall management of diabetes. So they did this study. They evaluated a probiotic comprised of anaerobic bacteria. Let's see if we can get those. They basically had different strains that they tried, and they had 76 type 2 diabetics over a 12-week period. And the results were no safety or tolerability issues observed compared with the placebo group. They didn't get anything. Subjects who had one of the strains, which had a whole variety of different bacteria, significantly improved their primary outcome, glucose control, as well as secondary outcomes like hemoglobin A1C and postprandial glucose. So for those of you who are diabetic, this is good news, because you're always looking for a way to manage blood sugar. Obviously, I'm going to say carbohydrate restriction is the first point of action for controlling your glucose. I would also say that making sure that your stress levels are under control can control your glucose as well. But what about this? Probiotics and getting your gut health in order is now being found to be pretty amazing for controlling blood sugar as well. Nobody's ever talked about the gut health component in blood sugar control. To our knowledge, in the conclusion, this is the first randomized controlled trial to administer 4 of the 5 strains to human subjects with type 2 diabetes. This was a proof of concept study, shows that the intervention was both safe and well tolerated, and supplementing with probiotics improves your postprandial glucose control. The limited sample size and inter-subject variability justifies future studies designed to confirm and expand upon this. I hope they run with this, because this is really good. They had like 12 different authors on this study, so they took this seriously, you guys. This is the kind of research that's going to help so much. And this was irrespective of the carbohydrate intake. Can you imagine if you combine carbohydrate restriction with meditation and other forms of de-stressing with a probiotic therapy in very severe type 2 diabetes? That could be really big in the years to come. So stay tuned for that, you guys. All right, I'm coming to you guys right after I hit the pre-canned questions that came in. I am coming to you guys. This is Ask Me Anything on Jimmy Rants. We always do this on Fridays at 11 a.m. Eastern time, so definitely ask your questions. Get them going, you guys. I see a bunch of them coming in over on YouTube and Facebook. I'm not seeing so many here on Instagram. Don't leave me hanging, Instagram. So if you have questions for Ask Me Anything, definitely put them in there. But let's get to the pre ones that came in first. The first question: are you able to eat eggs again? If so, how long did you have to stop eating them? So yes, there was a period of time 2 years ago where I had a food sensitivity test conducted, and it came back that I was way high, off the charts high, sensitive to not just eggs, but egg yolks and egg whites. So if it was just egg whites, I would just throw out the egg whites and eat the egg yolks, but it was both. And the person that was helping me with that basically explained, well, when you eat eggs a lot, you actually start to have a sensitivity to them. So this is an argument for making sure you mix up your diet, that you're not always eating the exact same thing all the time. You want to not have a monolithic eating style, because this is the unintended consequence of that. Now, I could literally eat eggs until the chickens come home, because I've got some beautiful chickens in the backyard back there that poop out breakfast every day for me, and I still eat a lot of eggs. I had 8 eggs this morning, and that keeps me satiated all day long. I love it. But I did have to give them up for a period of time. I gave them up, I want to say 7 or 8 months, just to kind of make sure everything was fine. I did recently get retested, and so we're going to see if that sensitivity is back or not. But I didn't have any manifestation of symptoms that hurt or that I felt from having the sensitivity. But if left unchecked, it could cause some issues down the road. So always good to know if you have sensitivity. So stop them for 6 months, eat them again, definitely test it again recently, and we'll see how I'm doing. But thank you for that question. And the next question: hi Jimmy, I always seem to be at a calorie deficit eating low carb. How do I gain weight? That is an interesting proposition, because you're not alone. A lot of people go keto, and one of the first things they notice is satiety and a loss of appetite. And I have people all the time say, oh my gosh, how in the world am I supposed to get in enough calories? I'm always under eating calories, just like this question here was saying. And it's not uncommon. The only thing I can tell you to do is set a goal for calories when you first start. Not that you need to count calories for the purposes of losing weight. This is the opposite problem. You're counting calories to make sure you're getting enough calories. So it's an interesting thing, because a lot of people are eating keto not for weight loss, but for some of the health benefits, Sometimes people do it for the brain health benefits. Sometimes people just want to control their blood sugar. Maybe they're a type 2 diabetic who doesn't have a weight problem, but they want to control their blood sugar. So there's a lot of reasons why people go keto besides weight loss. And so if you undereat, you will lose weight. And so what you do is you purposely set a goal to add in enough fat and protein that will get you to that point where you're at adequate calories. So for a man, probably no less than 1,600 calories is probably okay. That's on the low end. I wouldn't want a man to go too much lower than that. And then the same with women, probably not lower than 1,250 through 1,300, but again, that's pretty low. Try to space out your meals too, because sometimes people think, oh, well, I'm going to try to eat OMAD, and so they try to get in all their calories in one big meal, and then they end up eating 700 calories and they're full. So if you know that about yourself, maybe just to start, just to kind of get your body used to it, you want to go ahead and eat more often. I know that seems the antithesis of what we talk about so much, but in the context of trying to gain weight, that's a more prudent strategy. So I hope that helps you out. Then the last question, and this is always a funny one. What are 5 things you feel are common sense for good health? There's so many things that are common sense for good health. Obviously, eat real food would be at the top of the list for me. If you're not eating real food, you're not eating food. So real food has to be the basis, has to be the most common sense thing. Eat real food. Get sunshine. Again, we've been scared half to death that being in the sun's going to give you cancer. No, it won't. You need sunshine in your life. So for a lot of reasons, setting your circadian rhythm, getting vitamin D production. There's so many reasons why you want or you want sunshine on your body. Makes you feel good, And speaking of circadian rhythm, get good sleep. I wear this Oura ring to track my sleep. And if you sleep well, you're going to be healthy. And it's common sense. And it's not necessarily length of sleep. It's that quality of sleep that you're looking for, the REM and the deep sleep primarily, which is what I focus on. And if you do all these things that are healthy, you're going to get good sleep. So that's 3. Number 4, de-stress. I think most people's issue when they're stuck, either in weight or have an elevation in blood sugar or insulin or some other kind of issue that seems perplexing. Oh my gosh, I can't explain why in the world I'm having issues. It's because you're not de-stressing. So you need to figure out ways to meditate and deal with that stress in your life. And then the last one, common sense for good health. It's going to be a weird one, but cultivate real relationships. Because I am convinced we are meant to be interconnected with each other, either through friendships, through family relationships, through love relationships. All of those things are intertwined into your body and into your health. And if they're out of whack, you're not going to have good health. And I can tell you I have some amazing friends in my life. Some of them are watching right now. And I am grateful for them. And I know that they are helping me have good health and vice versa, because those relationships are so key. But thank you for that question. All right, guys, it is your turn here on Jimmy Rants. Ask me anything. Got plenty of time to ask your questions. So please go ahead and pop down there, your question that you want to ask me. Literally ask me anything. This is a fun show for me. I never know what you're going to ask, but I'm always game to answer literally anything you ask. So let's go back to the top here. JimmyRants.com is the website. The Lucky Stove. Great to see and hear you. Well, thanks for being here. Appreciate you popping in. The professor was obviously wrong for trying to only have one-sided positions. If you joined us late, there was a professor trying to block people from having an opposing viewpoint from what he wanted them to have, and thankfully that it got found out and got shut down. But yeah, I don't understand that. These people that think only one side is worth hearing. No. We need all sides to be heard. All right, Lucky Stove has the first question here. How did you build your online presence? YouTube, podcasting, social media, all the rest. Yeah, I mean, so I lost 180 pounds on the Atkins diet in 2004. And it was right at the end of the year I heard from the Atkins company. Mind you, I didn't eat any of the Atkins products. I just did the Atkins diet. I read the book. And so they're like, hey, we heard you lost some weight on our diet. And so, yeah, I lost a little bit. And so they featured me on the front of their website. And so that got a lot of people's attention. And they gave them my email address to write to me. So I started getting all these emails because Instagram didn't exist. Facebook didn't exist when 2004. So I started getting all these emails. Hey, who are you? Where'd you get? Where's your book? Who are you? Where are you from? Just all of these like overwhelming questions that people were asking. I'm like, will you people leave me alone? And so I started talking to a buddy of mine who was in the political realm at the time, and he said, "Dude, you need to go start a blog." I was like, "What in the world's a blog?" This was 2005. He's like, oh, you just like type stuff on there and you could rant, you could, whatever you want to do, you just write. And I'm like, well, I do love to write, so okay. And so then I remember I was trying to come up with the idea for what I would write about, what concept I would use. And Ricky Martin came on the radio at the time. Dun, 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 dun. And that's where Livin' La Vida Low Carb came from. So I started that April 2005, and then started doing my thing. The blog grew pretty quick. I had an existing site that I used to write for. It was just like a general kind of writing, but I'd been writing about my weight loss experience in the midst of it, and the owner of the site said, dude, you need your own site. So all of these people kind of pushed me to start Livin' La Vida Low Carb, and I did, April 2005. So over 15 years ago now. And then I was doing my thing. About a year later, this guy says, dude, I love your writing style. If you talk half as good as you write, you need to be a podcaster. 2006 is when he said that. And I'm going, what's a podcast? Like, the iPhone wasn't invented yet. It just wasn't a thing. And so he's like, I will help you produce your show, but why don't we come on this little compilation show? The compilation show was called Health Hacks Podcast. Doesn't exist anymore. Don't try to go look for it. But I was one of the contributors to the Health Hacks Podcast. And after a couple weeks on there, the producer guy said, dude, all I'm hearing from people is they want to hear more from you. And I'm like, why? Like, it's just a little 5-minute segment. I guess I was whetting their appetite. I guess my energy and my passion at that time was infectious and people wanted to connect with that. And so we hatched a plan to create my own show, which launched in October of 2006, called the Livin' La Vida Low Carb Show. That guy is still my producer to this day. Every podcast I've done has always been produced by him. His name is Kevin Kennedy Spain. So I am a podcaster today because of Kevin Kennedy Spain. And I still pay him to produce all of my content, all of my podcasts that I do. And of course, that show has now become the longest running health podcast on the internet. So it was almost happenstance that I built the online presence. I was just so passionate about getting the word out. I wasn't trying to build a business. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, you created this great brand and people, like, you're living La Vida Low Carb, you think Jimmy Moore. Yeah, I wasn't thinking any of that. I was a schlub that was just basically doing his thing, trying to help educate people, encourage people, basically by telling my story and sharing encouragement and being there. And then I started with the podcast, started interviewing people. I didn't know how to interview people. I'd never done that in my life. I did a little Christian radio in the 90s, but I never did what I do now. And I grew into that role. I tell people I practiced interviewing people when nobody was listening, so that by the time they started listening and everybody had iPhones and ways to listen a little more easy, I was pretty good at that point. And now I don't even think about interviews. I basically tell people, okay, bring your A game because we're going to ask a lot of good questions. And they're like, okay. Because sometimes people are a little tentative. They're like, what are you going to ask? I'm like, I don't know. We'll find out when we get into it. I like to have conversations. And I think it comes across a lot more authentic than this kind of canned question and canned answer. Nobody wants to hear that. You want to hear the humanity of the person. And that's what I think I bring to the podcasting table. So all of that is a long answer to say it was just relentlessness of consistency in the content. Anybody that's trying to build some kind of an online presence, that's the key. Consistency, 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 along with quality and along with connection. I take great pride in connecting with my audience. Like this show here is all about connection. Like, I don't know how this show would exist if I didn't have a connection with you guys. You're watching right now because you relate to me in some way. But thank you for that question. That is a perfect Ask Me Anything question. Low Carb New Yorker, finally got my meta tape and want to apply my Freestyle Libre. As I'm a hairy man, should I shave before cleaning and inserting? Yes. Shave your hairy arm, dude. And you'll be grateful when you go to pull it off. If you don't, you're going to be very ungrateful that you didn't shave. So yes, please shave. And for those of you that don't know, he's talking about putting on a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor. So yes, if you have a hairy arm, I've got a little bit of hair on my arm there. I've never shaved it because it's not real bad hairy. But yes, if you're really hairy there, just take a little shave, razor blade, clean it off and all that jazz. And then stick it on there. You'll be glad because 2 weeks is a long time. And when you go to pull it off, it's going to, if you don't have that hair gone. So, but thank you for that question. I know you're one of the low carb pioneers, but did you ever find it difficult to have your voice stand out from the rest without compromising? Well, see, keep in mind, when I started my work, 2005 blogging, 2006 podcasting, nobody really was stepping up. Dr. Atkins died in 2003 of the slip and fall accident in New York City. And when he died, low carb basically lost its leader for a little while. There was no leader. And that's one thing I observed when I was losing the weight. I kept looking for resources online. There was nobody. There was some doctors. There was Dr. Volek and Dr. Finney and Dr. Westman, different ones out there. But nobody was like vocal trying to meet the consumer. And I was like, well, that's crazy. Like there needs to be somebody that at least tells people that this is a viable way to eat. But low carb was so intricately tied to Atkins, and the media had done a great job of smearing the Atkins name, that nobody wanted to touch it. Well, I didn't care. I came along with Living La Vida Low Carb. I was a proud Atkins diet success story, and I talked about it very openly. And I got hate from vegans. I got hate from the Sugar Association. I got all kind of stuff. And for me, it was just, I felt like a lonely wolf there for a little while. So I would bring on these doctors and they would share their knowledge. But again, nobody else was around. Then it started to have a few other voices come in. Then when keto took off in like 2016, 17 was when it really, all these new people came in. Then all these people started talking about it very openly. I have never worried about my voice standing out because nobody else is Jimmy Moore. I've never tried to pretend to be somebody. And I know that not everybody likes me. I'm too fat for them. I talk too country hick for them. There's always going to be people that will not relate to me, and that's cool. I don't need to relate to everybody. And that's why I love the variety of voices that are out there. If you're looking for someone who's a bodybuilder, you got bodybuilder experts. You're looking for someone who's into a higher protein keto, there's people for that. If you're looking at it, just to control autoimmune disease, you've got specific people that talk to that. And then you've got people like myself who talk from a general audience standpoint about a lot of different things. And so I have never found it difficult to have my voice stand out because my competition is me. If I'm not on my A game, if I'm not bringing you my very, very best, then I'm only cheating you guys. So every time I come on camera, every time I go behind the microphone, every time I write a book, when I do something, I'm doing it to the best of my ability. And I think that's why I've been able to stick around so long. But thank you. 4 eggs most mornings for summer might become problematic, or for short periods should be okay. Short periods should be okay. I think for me with the eggs, I had them habitually for probably a year. Again, I've got free eggs every day from those backyard chickens, so it's kind of hard to turn them down. I will tell you that I just interviewed a lady who talked about over consuming vitamin A and the health consequences that happened to her. Well, guess what's in egg yolks? A whole you-know-what load of vitamin A. And so there might be an experiment where I need to give up that for a little while for me coming up. But stay tuned. Judy Barnes Baker is her name, and we'll be sharing that podcast real soon on Living La Vida Low Carb Show. Today's day 4, my first ever extended fast past 24 hours. I'm doing great. Mike, go get it. That's awesome. Brigitte said, do you test ketones when you just eat your normal diet, or only when you do the N=1? So I have tested blood ketones, urine ketones, breath ketones. My current device is this one called BioSense. And so it is a 10-to-1 ratio of breath ketones to the beta hydroxybutyrate. So if it measures 10, it's a 1.0 on the BHB. So when I had to prick my finger, I basically limited that to as little times as possible so I didn't have little holes all in my finger. But now all I have to do is blow. I test occasionally. I don't test obsessively because, look, when you do this a while, you know whether you're in ketosis or not. You can feel it. But for people that are new, people that are just starting, people just trying to learn how to ride the bicycle, so to speak, it's a good idea to test early and often. Anna says, are you fully carnivore or will you remain eating keto? I'm keto carnivore. And there's a distinction between carnivore and keto carnivore. I think if you're going to get a lot of the therapeutic effects of a carnivore diet, which is what I'm doing for the most part. I had a sweet lady in Puerto Rico send me some Puerto Rican avocado. So I made this beautiful guacamole. I put it on my stories here today on Instagram, but it was just delicious. And I'm like, steak and guac. I'm not going to be anal retentive that that's not technically carnivore. It's still very deliciously high fat, low carb. But yeah, keto carnivore I think is the key, because carnivore can be a slippery slope. If you don't say eat the natural fats that come with the meat, then you could lean towards leaner meats, and the leaner meats could be problematic for some people when it comes to satiety and comes to some of the issues that I see people having with carnivore, higher blood sugars and things like that. So yes, I remain keto carnivore, and when I cheat with keto, right? Rachel says, I'm addicted to cheese. How long do I have to go without it and then reincorporate it to find out if cheese is causing me digestive issues? Great question, Rachel. I think if you give up something like cheese for 30 days, like, see, here's the thing. You don't always feel the differences when you do an elimination diet. And so because you don't always feel it, you're like, well, I gave it up for 30 days and I didn't feel anything. You need to figure out what you want to quantify. So are you going to quantify just subjective feelings? Am I itching or not itching anymore? Am I having bloat or not bloat anymore? If you're looking at just subjective things, maybe give it a long time. That way you can kind of notice, especially when you reintroduce it after that long period of time and you see the symptoms come back, you're like, whoa. So that could be one way to do it. You might want to also run some various markers, things like insulin, and other markers in your blood test that might be able to track. So if you do that, that would be more quantified. I'd say try to work with someone who specializes in elimination diets, like a functional medicine practitioner, because they'll be able to like guide you and run these tests that you need to have run to see if actually dairy is an issue for you or not. But thank you for that question. What'd you do before going full-time with Living La Vida Low Carb, says Low Carb New Yorker. Yes, so everybody asked this, and I had a very boring life. Like, I always dreamt my whole career before I started doing this. I always dreamt I could do something that I loved and that I was good at. And what that meant was I loved talking to people. So I did a lot of kind of retail types of jobs. I also loved the whole concept of marketing. And so I did a few marketing types of things as well. I worked here in Spartanburg, South Carolina, I worked in a Christian bookstore down the road. It's the largest, used to be the largest Christian bookstore in the whole Southeast. They hired me as a marketing manager. I used to be a music buyer in a chain of Christian bookstores in Virginia called Heaven and Earth. And I was the music buyer. And so I was the one that they would call. And remember, I was also a disc jockey in Virginia Beach at a Christian radio station. I'd be the one they'd call and say, well, the lyrics that they heard on the radio go something like Jesus, Jesus, something, something. And I'm like, I'm going to need a little more than that. Well, it had a brick in it. Oh, it's this. Oh. And so you just kind of like, I was the one that they always came to for the encyclopedia of those kinds of things. And so I did a lot of that kind of job. The job I had right before I started full-time with Is Ldl Low Carb was I was at a big corporation answering all the emails. This is a major company where customers would type in complaints and compliments and all kinds of correspondence. I answered all the emails, 3,000 emails a day. Now, a lot of it was canned responses. You just cut and paste and nut it up. But it was a very interesting experience because then I started getting my own emails, and it got me pretty good at responding to people because I always wanted to have that personalized connection to my audience when they wrote to me. Now, today I have a lady that answers emails for me, but I had that skill for many years thanks to that job I did right before. But yeah, customer service, marketing, emails, that kind of thing. I tell people that the jobs I had before I did Is Ldl Low Carb actually prepared me for what I do now. The only thing I've not ever been prepared for is talking. Like I had to grow into that role of being able to talk on camera, be able to talk behind a microphone, be able to comfortably interview people. None of that was a skill I had. I learned on the job. But I think I've gotten decently good at it now. What brand was the Ketometer? So this is the BioSense is what it's called. I think it's mybiosense.com if you want to go look them up. Paul says, I haven't been around much since the sabbatical. I haven't heard you talk about your wife. Well, it's because I left her. That happened 2 weeks after I went on sabbatical. And South Carolina has a law. You have to be separated for a year before you can finalize it. And so we're coming up in 2 weeks. Will be a year. And the paperwork will be filed and it will be over. So, yeah. Things aren't supposed to last forever sometimes, and unfortunately this was one of those things, but thank you for that. What's the final conclusion about LDL cholesterol? Is it relevant or not? So I'm going to answer it by asking you, what is LDL cholesterol? Are we talking about the LDL-C that's on a standard lipid panel? If we are, then that's only an estimated number. It's not a directly measured number. It's an estimated number. And so if it's estimated based on the other numbers, is it accurate? Well, the problem is, no, it's not accurate when you're a keto dieter, because when you're keto, your triglycerides are under 100, typically. Your HDL cholesterol is over 50, typically, and when those numbers are there, guess what happens to that LDL-C on your standard lipid panel? It's totally miscalculated, and it's usually miscalculated on the high end, upwards of 100 points. So if you have 100 points higher on an LDL-C that's guesstimated, plus you have higher HDL, all of that contributes to a high total cholesterol, and your doctor's pushing a statin drug. The more accurate thing about LDL is looking at the LDL particle and particle number and particle size. So you can run this test called an NMR lipoprofile test. We talk about all this stuff in my book, Cholesterol Clarity, if you want to learn more. But you run that test and it gives you the total number of LDL particles. That's called LDLP. And then it gives you the breakdown of the size of the LDL particles. And the one you're looking for, trying to be as small as possible a number, is the small LDLP. So these are the ones that are truly atherosclerotic that you want to keep down. So final conclusion about LDL, is it relevant or not? It really doesn't tell you anything. LDLP, small LDLP are more important. But I would say triglycerides and HDL and the ratio between those two numbers is what you should be shooting for on your cholesterol. Sharon wants to know, what are your thoughts on the toxicity of frying and charring or smoking meat? Well, try to minimize it as much as possible. I think there's enough evidence now that there are for sure carcinogens that happen when you overcook meats like that. I think if you lightly char them, smoke them, it's probably no big deal. And same with frying. If you fry, make sure you do it in an oil that has a high smoke point, because when you don't, that's when you start having some of the rancidity and the toxicity that comes in there. So yeah, I think just be prudent about it and it's probably okay. Plus, who wants a burnt steak? Eat it medium rare, medium, and it's perfect. All right, Instagram, thank you for all those wonderful questions. We're going to pop over here now to my Facebook page, see what you guys have to say. What's up, Facebook? Nancy says, I'm seeing a lot more lately on the benefits of fasting, even intermittent fasting, on your health. This seems to be especially targeted to us oldsters. You're not old, Nancy. I'm a big believer in intermittent fasting. Since you literally wrote a book about it, have you noticed more coming out on this lately? Yes. So here's the book. It's called The Complete Guide to Fasting. I wrote this with the master on fasting, Dr. Jason Fung. Back in 2016 was when that book came out. And yeah, we're seeing a sustained kind of interest in fasting. Here's the fun thing about fasting. Unlike keto, unlike paleo, carnivore, fasting kind of fits all of them, because and it has a benefit that's going to last a long time. And so that book still sells very, very well. And I'm grateful for it. If it wasn't for that book, I'd be completely broke today. But that book has been wonderful. Yeah, it seems that people are catching on. And I think some of the positive news about autophagy, the positive news from some studies that have come out that said, just fasting for this period of time can actually improve blood glucose and insulin and type 2 diabetes and lose weight. It's just, there's so much positive coming out about it that I think people are just waking up to it. But yeah, it's been out there a little while. Jessica says, hi Jimmy, hope you continue to be safe in the world gone mad. Yes, it is a world gone mad. Question, presume the NMR labs are normal and a CIMT, which is the carotid intima media thickness, it's this little, thing, is perfect. Do you know if there are any other major markers for heart attack, stroke risk, for example, chronic anxiety, literally anything that can cause disturbances in your hormones, and anxiety would be a big one. Unresolved stress and unresolved trauma. This is something, Jessica, I have tried to get people to understand. If you went through something in your childhood, or you went through something really traumatic as an adult and you never got that dealt with mentally, that's going to manifest in your body physically. How could it not? And it usually manifests in the body in a cardiovascular way. So definitely there are so many things that can impact that. Try to get those all checked out. Do a close evaluation on your life. I think sometimes we just think, oh, it's in the past, it happened. No. Yeah, it happened, but no, if you didn't resolve it, it's still there. It's still manifesting. And some people are like, well, you can't live in the past and let that be your excuse. Well, it is a valid excuse if it still impacts you to this day. When will we have a keto conference in person again, says Kira. That's a great question, Kira. Most of the ones were canceled for this year. I do know there's several ones. I see Maria Emmerich has one coming up online. The next one I'm aware of, it's not a keto conference, but the Weston A. Price Foundation is putting on a conference in November in Atlanta, Georgia. I am thinking of going to that one just because I'm dying to see people. But yeah, that's in like mid-November, early to mid-November. So look up the Weston A. Price Foundation. As far as the keto conferences, I don't know yet because we don't know what's happening with the coronavirus right now. Usually the tradition for the first keto conference of the year is the Metabolic Health Summit out on the West Coast. That's Dr. Dominique D'Agostino's conference, usually in Long Beach, California. And then all the rest, Low Carb Denver comes February, and then all the rest of them during the year. So I guess it's just a wait and see at this point. They're planning, they're having, the meetings, and they're setting dates and all this right now, but really at this point, nobody knows, to be honest. Tara says, speaking of hair and asking you anything, would you ever consider growing a full beard? Inquiring minds want to know. Well, I used to have the full beard. I'm not one of these people, Tara, that has the beard like come out like big bushy. It just doesn't grow out. But yeah, I mean, I have had it be all the way. I started shaving it like this. It just looked good. I liked it. But I'd be willing to change if somebody wanted it to be changed. And yeah, you never know. Let's see. Norma wants to know, will you have Jen Stevens on any of your shows? I don't know who Jen Stevens is. You're going to have to educate me more because I have no idea who that is. Candy Hall, could you please talk a bit about thyroid? I cannot get mine regulated. My dosage keeps changing. I take Armour, started out with 90, but my heart raced. Then I went down to 60. Still heart and chest pain. Now I'm 30. I feel too low. My hair is falling out like crazy. I also have Hashimoto's. Yeah, I could tell you had Hashimoto's. You need to see a functional medicine practitioner. Because that's what they're experts at. So try to find one that can help you balance that. And I'm sorry you're going through that. Sometimes medicine is good, but medicine with different like lifestyle modalities and supplements and adaptogens and things like that might help to regulate that. But having your thyroid out of whack is certainly no fun at all. So I'm sorry that's happening. There are a ton of online summits these days. I miss the personal contact, but these are good. Yeah, exactly, Jessica. That's true. All right, thank you. Oh, Norma said the lady she mentioned, Jen Stevens, wrote, delay, don't deny, and feast, fast, repeat. Yeah, literally never heard of her before. If she wants to reach out, I'd be delighted to talk to somebody. Sounds like she's a fasting expert, but thank you for that. Thank you, Facebook. Let's pop over here to YouTube. I know I had a ton of questions come in, so bear with me, you guys. Bill says, have you tried Carnivore and ever, I'm considering it. Yeah, I answered that question already. I'm currently doing Carnivore. Can I give a zinc supplement to my 10-year-old? Zinc is just a vitamin, so why not? RJB, I know you're not a physician, but I am interested in what you might know about diet for those with ApoE4 or ApoE2. I'm a 2 and a friend is a 4. So I do know a little bit about this, and I did in my book, Cholesterol Clarity, talk about the ApoE genotype. If you're not familiar with that, you guys, it is a genetic marker. You can run it one time, and if you have it run, then you know what your number is. Mine is a 3-3. 3-3 is the most common. 70% of the population is 3-3, but then you've got these genetic alterations with a 2 in it like you have and a 4 like your friend. 4's the ones that you're worried about, especially a 4-4. If someone's a 4-4, oh my gosh, like they're set up for heart problems, and it's unfortunate. They tend to have extremely high cholesterol, a little out of control, not genetic. It's not familial hypercholesterolemia. It's this ApoE4. For the 2, for you, and again, we talk about this in the book, maybe that means you need to cut back a little bit on your saturated fat content. And I know that's sad for a lot of people. Oh my God, I thought saturated fat was healthy. It is, except in that context. So read up on it a little more, get some information, but I'm certainly no expert on an ApoE genotype. I'll tell you who helped me with that the most in cholesterol clarity was one of my experts, Dr. William Davis. He wrote the book Wheat Belly. Go look him up. He did a lot of great research on ApoE genotypes, so he can definitely help you out and answer your question. But thank you for your question here today. I'm keto carnivore, says Craig. Any advice for the first date I have set up for next week because she's vegan? I want to say you asked me this question last week. Yeah, don't make a big deal about it. Don't let her change you to vegan though. Now, if you convert her to carnivore, marry that girl right away. So, what do we do to combat Meatless Monday? Well, you just don't participate. That's how you combat it. When I write my kids' keto book, not a cookbook necessarily, can I reach out to discuss publishing suggestions and connections? Yes, because I just did that this morning. I did a 30-minute consultation, didn't charge anything, with a friend in the carnivore community who's working on a book. And she just said, hey, can I pick your brain? You've done this a little while. I'm like, I have done this a little while. And so she had some really smart questions, and I gave her some of the ups, downs, and in-betweens of writing books. It's not as glamorous as you might think it is. I mean, obviously, I'm extremely proud of my baby. This will always be my baby. Like, this is the one book that I wanted to write. When they came to me, they're like, hey, we want you to write books for us. I was like, yeah, this is the book I want to write. And they wouldn't let me write it first. This was my first book with the major publisher. But once this came out, it changed my life because so many people said, I want that. It helped me. So that was pretty gratifying. On keto, we still need blood glucose in addition to ketones for brain health. No, you don't. Because your body makes the glucose from the fat and protein that you consume. So you don't have to eat carbohydrate in order for your body to get that glucose. This is where the mainstream messes up. They think you need to eat a minimum of 130 grams of carbohydrate in your diet because that's the amount of glucose it takes to feed your brain. But what they're not paying attention to is that the body is extremely efficient at making glucose from fat and protein, process called gluconeogenesis, and so it can convert that over for all those glucose-dependent functions in your body. This is why, as a carnivore dieter, you may have a higher level of blood glucose. And what that is the body knows that it has a glucose storage, especially in the mornings, where there are glucose-dependent functions that need that glucose. And so, no, you don't need to consume the glucose. You get it because of gluconeogenesis. But thank you for that, Chimp Logic. Keto Court, any plans to have Robert Sywes to be on your podcast again? I love the conversation about y'all, especially with your focus on childhood trauma now. Yeah, he just had a baby, him and his wife. I did have his wife on. Janae was on recently, right before, like 2 weeks before she popped out that baby. And so that was kind of fun to interview her. And we talked about him behind his back. But yeah, I always love talking to him. He's a very intense guy. Like, there's certain people you interview and you're just like, you know, he's so intense. But yeah, I mean, obviously with his focus, I mean, I don't run out of people to interview. That's my problem. I want to interview everybody and I don't have time to fit them all in. So Jen says, Jimmy, you're just wonderful. You've gone through a lot of emotional stuff lately, and yet you're still strong for us. I admire you so much. I'm trying to find the strength to fix my life too. Well, hang in there, Jen. Tough times show you who you are. And I remind people of that often that feel so down because of their life circumstances. And if you're one of those people that feels like you've been beat up by the world, can I tell you, if you're still around, you're stronger than most. Most people crumble and fall under all that. And yeah, 2020 has really sucked for me. Came back from sabbatical March the 1st with the expectation that I would get back to the work I was doing before I left. And then 10 days later, all the COVID stuff hit, and it's just taken a huge hit on my business. I lost a bunch of the sponsors just because they're fearful of what's happening in our country right now. And I am going through the separation. So on top of that, I have all of these things. And so it can be tough. And I learned a long time ago that when you've overcome stuff in your life, and I have, thank God, overcome childhood trauma and different things, you don't let anything be an excuse as to why you give up. You just keep going, and you keep on keeping on, and you keep doing your thing. There's too much at stake not to keep going. So that's what keeps me going, is knowing that I'm doing what I know I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm still making a difference in the world. And I still matter to people. Even if up here I don't always believe it, I have my rough days. I have those days when I just feel like walking away. That's just honest. Because it's an ugly, ugly world being an online public figure these days. And you can't even say the sky is blue anymore without somebody telling you what a horrible person you are. So hang in there. We're all doing this thing of life and trying to make the best of it. We're all going through stuff because of COVID and the race relation stuff and all that. But some of us have some personal stuff on top of all that that's making it pretty difficult. So I'm trying to be an example of you can make it even if you're hurting really bad. I'm going to end it right here because I'm overwhelmed with emotion right now. Because some days this gets hard. And you guys are fun. Like, I love talking to you. I come on Jimmy Rants every day. I do my thing. And I love every minute of what I get to do. But I do have that propensity to want to walk away a lot. And I know that's wrong. You got me, Jen. You got me. But that was a good final question. I am going to pop off of here. That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. I don't like crying on camera. You struck a chord in me, Jen. You guys know the rest. JimmyRants.com. Bye.